Hi, my name is Patrick Lucy, and I'm here to talk to you about cybersecurity for normal people. So not 0 days or the crazy stuff hackers do, but rather simple things that regular folks can do to be better positioned online. Today I'll touch upon family planning for digital assets. Or just to put it very bluntly, if your partner is in a car accident and dies, or is in a coma, can you access their Gmail, their Facebook, their other critical accounts to then manage them on their behalf? The answer to this is probably, I'm not sure. It's a topic that we probably don't talk enough about. That's why I want to talk about it today. This issue is kind of similar to life insurance. It's something that you never want to use, but it's important that you have. So life insurance provides financial cover in the case of a terrible accident. Digital asset planning, same concept, but instead of a financial payout, what it does is pay out in saving you time and stress in what is already an extremely high stress scenario. So what are examples of what we're trying to avoid? One of the most sort of public versions of this would be Facebook ghost accounts. Maybe you've read articles about this, potentially even encountered this in your own life. But this is where when someone passes, their digital presence continues on afterwards because no one else has access to deactivate or manage these accounts. Digital planning can help with this. This is the entire point. Someone else can be able to log in, manage, deactivate, curate things on someone's behalf. Potentially also for in a partner family planning scenario, maybe some critical accounts are tied to one person's email address. Things like online banking, electrical utility bills, maybe even just the information to log into the online portal for your kid's pediatrician. There are family important accounts that are managed by only one of the individuals. So being able to easily transition and manage those. Online companies now have a process to deal with this. If someone passes, they can be notified, and then there's entered into frankly, a bureaucratic process to either deactivate the account or transfer it to someone else. But, if you're thinking about this again, car crash scenario, one of the last things you want to be doing in this scenario is interacting with the customer support of multiple different companies at that time. Now, potentially some of you are thinking, well, I know my partner's PIN on their smartphone. If anything really bad happens, I can just get their phone, type their PIN in, open up some of the apps, and sort of go from there. Now, to use a wonkier cybersecurity term, the threat model that we're talking about today is, again, to go back to the car accident analogy, maybe your partner's laptop and smartphone are in the car with them when the accident happens. So you don't have access to any of their devices in this scenario. Can you still get access? So before I talk through how to configure some settings and everything to ensure you can plan for this kind of access, take a minute to explain just who I am and why you're listening to me. As I mentioned, my name is Patrick Lucy. I've been a cybersecurity consultant for over 5 years. Now, to be very clear, I'm not the super cool hacker discovering new 0 days. I was more the project manager, keeping those hackers on time and the corporate clients that hired us happy. I'm technical enough that I taught myself how to use Linux. I'm not scared of the command line, but I'm also not a computer science major. So really mostly just a dorky dad who taught himself this and is really interested in this topic. So now to get into it, you want to take steps to have some family planning for your digital assets. So step 0, before you get started configuring and setting things up, is to discuss this topic with your partner. Because people have a wide variety of comfort in terms of what they share with one another. So, for example, one of my former coworkers, he and his partner just have complete default sharing at all times, as in they are logged into each other's Google accounts on their own laptops at all times. So browsers nowadays can allow you to be logged into multiple accounts simultaneously, so they can just toggle between the two whenever they want. On a daily basis, or also in the case of emergency, they just have default access to one another. Now, that works for them. That doesn't mean it has to work for everyone else. That is not how my partner and I decided to set things up. That's not that default level of access is not the level of privacy that we're comfortable with. Again, that's totally fine. Just need to discuss, figure out what you're comfortable with. We wanted to enable access in the case of an emergency, but not necessarily on a daily basis. So enabling this kind of more situational specific access requires you to take a couple more steps. And those are the steps that I'll discuss right now. So step one is getting yourself organized. You can't effectively share your accounts or share this information unless you have it together in a place and can share it effectively and efficiently. So think about, how do I manage all my credentials now? Just working on one common assumption. Probably have a lot of things sort of default saved in a browser that you're using. Google, Chrome and Firefox often have prompts. Do you want to save this? Click yes. That's easier. Don't need to bother with this again. And that's fine. I'm not here to talk about the security aspect of things. I'm here to talk about the family planning functionality versions of it. So unless you're a person who has really configured everything in Firefox to sort of sync to different devices, chances are saving things in a browser means that, again, it's tied to your device. Again, the threat model that we're talking about right here is your partner does not have access to any of your devices. So you need to be able to store all your accounts in a way that they can access them. So we'll get to that access in the next step, but for now, just organizing, my strong recommendation is for everyone to use a password manager. These are programs that can just store all of your passwords. They store them in an encrypted file, which then has one password to unlock it. So think of it, Lord of the Rings, the one password to rule them all. It can help generate extremely secure passwords. And these programs are all usually open source, so they're free to download. I'm not here to recommend one password manager program or the other. You can Google it quickly. There are many listicles that rank them, provide reviews. I'm agnostic on which type of password manager you use, so long that you use one. Because then you put all your critical accounts in there. You know, maybe you don't need to put your Pinterest password in there or anything like that, but you know, your primary email address, banking information, you know, anything that you think is important, relevant for someone else to potentially access. Put those in the password manager. Save that in an encrypted file that you have on your computer. So, step two, how can you ensure access to that local file that lives on your computer? Again, we don't want this to be tied to devices. We want this to be functional even without any devices involved. So use a program that provides sort of syncing to the cloud for a local folder. If you basically remember Dropbox, that's what Dropbox's entire model was. So they're still around. That's still an option. Google Drive has a client that you can download that basically provides the same feature. So you can download the program and it sets up a local file that then can also be accessible through Google Drive. Partners can share access to that folder. I personally use a program called SpiderOak. It's a more encrypted one. It's basically just Dropbox, but really encrypted and secure. So there's a monthly subscription to it. But again, you're paying money because when you pay money, that's how the business generates their revenue as opposed to generating it from you. And obviously also OneDrive from Microsoft is another option too. My experience, that's been a little buggy, but it could get the job done as well. So save your password manager file there, ensure that you have shared access, and there you go. So step 3 is actually offline. Write that on a piece of paper, write the password to the password manager and put it in a safe location. So put it in wherever you have your critical files, like your birth certificate or social security card. Write down, you and your partner write down the passwords to each other's password manager files and put that in the secure location with all your other critical life documents. Something else that is important to print out a physical version of and have offline is two-factor for Gmail. Go ahead and just make another working assumption, assuming people have Gmail as their primary email address. Right now in the US, it's over 50% market share. So talking to an American audience, that's a good assumption to make. And I hope that on your Gmail that you have the two-factor authentication activated. So besides just having a password, you would then also need, the SMS code or the authenticator app on your smartphone to be able to get access, password, and then a second factor, particularly if you're trying to log in on a new device. So, but again, we're talking about the scenario for a partner. So even if they have the password, they're logging in from their own laptop, a new device, they would need more than just the password to do so. Gmail has an excellent feature that's offline backup codes. So you can click through the settings and activate this, and it creates 10 one-time use backup codes that you can print that sheet, store it somewhere safe, store it in the same spot where you're storing the password manager password and all your other critical documents. And then should the need arise, partner can use the password and then also use those other backup codes as a second factor to be able to gain access. Now, this can be helpful to you yourself, not just in this worst case scenario, but in the scenario of like, oh, my laptop and phone were both just stolen. I need to get access to myself again. And I don't have my smartphone, which is where all the second factors would go to. I'm locked out of myself. Well, then the backup codes could provide a way for you to regain access to yourself, not just in the worst case, car accident scenario, but also just I lost my stuff scenario. So the final step 4, is to actually practice the scenario once a year. It's fine to have a plan, but then to never actually practice it, you won't know if it totally works. That's why it's important to practice it once a year. You find out, oh, the cloud thing isn't syncing right, some update messed things up, or, something else happened, and you don't want to find out that it's not working when that terrible scenario has arrived, and then all the work that you've done isn't working, is sort of not worth it. Just take the moments to do the due diligence once a year, test drive it, make sure that it's working, so that way, should that terrible scenario ever come, you know that it's working. You're not trying it for the first time. So, now if that sounds like a lot for you, that's okay. That's what I do. I'm probably more on the far end of the spectrum. If you want a Cliff Notes version of what to do, then it's really about focusing on your primary email address. Again, generally assuming your Gmail. Those are the keys to your personal digital kingdom, if you will. If you get access to a person's primary email, you can eventually just password reset any other accounts that are tied to it and everything else. So it's sort of a middle ground. You don't need to put everything in there. Just make sure that someone else has access to your Gmail should the need arise, and then they could potentially just reset things as though they were you to get what they need to. So write the Gmail password down on a piece of paper, put that in the same place you're storing the other critical files, on a different piece of paper than what the backup codes are, the offline backup codes that I mentioned earlier. So that's sort of the Cliff Notes in between version. And recently, major online companies, Google, Facebook, have started to offer settings to actually manage this scenario. So you can sort of pre-select other users to be granted legacy access. This is still a bureaucratic process. It's optimized a little bit, but it will still be work for the person named the legacy user to be able to gain access to it. Either there's like a period, you still have to give notice that someone has passed away and everything else. So it's better than nothing, but it's still a bureaucratic process, and it will take longer than if you just have this sort of shared access set up and ready to go. So maybe that's something that works for parents, where it's not quite as absolutely critical. Talk with your parents, set them up on those legacy accounts and everything else so you can eventually get access that way. But, for a partner that you're having family planning with and everything else, say you want to plan for more direct and dynamic access and taking the steps that I shared today, either going the whole password manager route, which is still what I would recommend. But again, if the Cliff Notes version, just making sure you have access to the Gmail and those offline backup codes, then that works too. So thanks for listening today. Hope this was helpful, and maybe I'll talk to you guys again in the future. Thanks.